Why do people always say Korean movies are so emotionally powerful? The 2013 film The Flu is a disaster blockbuster whose scale is every bit as impressive as a Hollywood production. Unlike Train to Busan, where the horror comes from a city overrun by zombies, the most terrifying thing about this movie is something we cannot even see, a deadly virus. It has no shape, yet it spreads at an unimaginable speed, rapidly spiraling completely out of control. A city that was once lively and prosperous can become a living hell within just a few days. Those who become infected are treated like garbage, rounded up and transported to a massive incineration pit, where they are burned and destroyed. As the situation spirals out of control, the South Korean government even deploys the military to seal off the entire city in an attempt to cover up the truth. A shadow of death falls over everyone. And when people are pushed into extreme fear, their truest sides slowly begin to emerge. Some desperately try to escape, caring only about survival. Others risk everything to protect their families and refuse to leave them behind. As social order begins to collapse, both the light and darkness of human nature are magnified. The question is, can humanity hold on to its final moral boundary? Today, let's take a look at this incredibly intense Korean disaster movie. This terrifying story begins with a shipping container smuggled into South Korea from Southeast Asia. As the container doors slowly open, a horrible stench immediately hits the two brothers. They shine their flashlights inside and discover that the container is filled with rotting corpses.
Terrified, they turn around and try to escape, but suddenly, a living boy crawls out from the corner. The younger brother isn't wearing a mask, unknowingly making himself the first person to become infected with the virus. After recording a video as proof of their discovery, the two men load the only survivor into a truck and take him away. During the journey, they stop at a rest area. The little boy takes advantage of the opportunity and jumps out of the truck, escaping into the streets. Meanwhile, the younger brother suddenly develops a high fever and begins feeling extremely sick. His brother quickly takes him to a pharmacy to buy some medicine. Seeing how badly he is coughing, the pharmacist gives him some cough medicine. A child standing nearby becomes curious and moves closer. Suddenly, the infected man loses control of his coughing, sending droplets of saliva directly onto the child's face. The man himself still thinks he simply has an ordinary cold. But with every cough, countless droplets carrying the highly contagious virus spread through the air and reach other people inside the pharmacy. A devastating disaster has already begun. The very next day, strange things start happening everywhere. The pharmacist suddenly begins coughing uncontrollably while riding a bus. A high school student keeps coughing all the way to the teacher's desk while handing in an assignment. The child who was hit by the infected man's droplets collapses with a high fever at kindergarten. Meanwhile, the younger brother takes the medicine, but instead of getting better, his coughing becomes even worse. Soon, he begins vomiting large amounts of blood. His brother finally panics and rushes him to the hospital. The doctor treating him is Kim In-hae, one of the country's leading infectious disease specialists. After examining the patient's symptoms, she initially determines that he is suffering from a new strain of influenza with an extremely high fatality rate. Later, she checks the man's phone and discovers the video he recorded inside the shipping container. That's when she realizes he became infected after coming into contact with the corpses. This is the first time South Korea has encountered such a highly contagious and deadly supervirus. Everyone immediately goes on high alert. The doctor tracks down the older brother and demands to know where the shipping container came from. But terrified of being held responsible, the man pretends not to know anything. He even tries to forcefully take his brother out of the hospital. The medical staff warn him that the patient must be isolated immediately, but he refuses to listen and even charges into the operating room. Unfortunately, it is already too late. Not long afterward, his younger brother dies in agony. The older brother breaks down in tears. When the medical staff try to pull him away from the body, he ends up smearing blood all over one of the doctor's faces. Anyone familiar with infectious diseases knows exactly what this means. The doctor has almost certainly been exposed to the virus. A group of medical workers finally manages to restrain the man, while the professor immediately reports the emergency to the authorities. He explains that the virus spreads through respiratory droplets. Once infected, a person will suffer terribly and die within 3 days. And at this point, there is no effective treatment. But the government officials don't take the warning seriously. Instead, they suspect the professor may be exaggerating the danger. Meanwhile, the city is already descending into chaos. More and more people are coughing up blood. A bride suddenly vomits blood and collapses while exchanging wedding rings. A driver coughs so violently that he loses control of the steering wheel and crashes. All over the streets, people are coughing, collapsing, and dying. Yet inside a government meeting room, officials are still questioning whether the professor has exaggerated the danger of the flu. Then they look out the window. The horrific scene outside leaves everyone completely stunned. Before they can even process what they're seeing, a staff member suddenly rushes into the room with an emergency report. The number of patients is exploding. Every hospital in the city is completely overwhelmed. Even doctors and nurses are becoming infected and collapsing. This is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the film. The real horror isn't simply the disaster itself, it's the disastrous decisions made from within. The movie brutally mocks the weaknesses of bureaucracy, slow reactions, endless discussions, and delayed action. In real disasters, the most valuable rescue window is often wasted in endless meetings. Only now do these powerful officials finally realize that the situation has become far more serious than they ever imagined. And their first thought isn't to save people. Instead, they immediately think about getting on helicopters and escaping from the city that has now become a living hell. Kim In-hae originally has a chance to escape by helicopter, but she is a single mother, and her young daughter, Mi-reu, is still at home. There is no way she can abandon her child, so she rushes back to find her daughter. What she doesn't know is that, just a few hours earlier, Mi-reu had taken some bread to a parking lot to feed stray cats. There, she accidentally encounters Mi-reu, the Southeast Asian boy who has been hiding there. Mi-reu kindly shares her bread with him. Seeing that the boy is constantly coughing and struggling to breathe, she even finds a firefighter to help him. But by the time they return, Mi-reu has disappeared. Meanwhile, Ji-goo carries Mi-reu around searching for him. Suddenly, they see an infected woman collapse inside an elevator. Ji-goo puts Mi-reu on a nearby chair and rushes over to help the woman. But when he comes back, Mi-reu is gone. Elsewhere, Kim In-hae is heading home to find her daughter. She calls Mi-reu's phone and gets in touch with Ji-goo. After learning their location, she rushes over. Ji-goo also checks the surveillance cameras and discovers that Mi-reu has run into a supermarket. Inside, the supermarket is already in complete chaos. People are fighting over supplies and grabbing whatever they can find, almost as if everyone is enjoying a massive free-for-all. Several infected people are coughing up blood. Just as Mi-reu is about to be crushed by the panicking crowd, Ji-goo arrives in time and grabs her. After reuniting with Kim In-hae, the three of them prepare to leave. But suddenly, a large number of riot control troops storm into the supermarket. They show no mercy and immediately begin violently suppressing the crowd. Kim In-hae originally wants Ji-goo to escape with them by plane. But Ji-goo believes that, as a rescue worker, he cannot simply abandon the people who still need help. He gives Kim In-hae his car keys and tells her to take her daughter and leave first. While government officials are panicking and retreating, Ji-goo continues to carry out his duty as a frontline rescue worker. But when Kim In-hae and Mi-reu finally reach the airport and make it through security, Mi-reu suddenly coughs several times. The security officers immediately become suspicious. Kim In-hae desperately tries to explain that her daughter is fine, but the officials refuse to let them board the plane. The aircraft is carrying some of the most powerful government officials in the country, and they are unwilling to take even the slightest risk. Kim In-hae and Mi-reu are immediately taken to a makeshift quarantine facility. The once busy and prosperous Bundang city has now become a giant prison. The government sends thousands of soldiers into the infected zone and forces all residents into temporary quarantine camps for screening. Only those who survive 48 hours without developing symptoms will be allowed to leave. A cold and brutal set of rules is imposed. Men, women, and children are all forced to strip naked for inspection. Officials look for red rashes on their bodies as an indication of infection. Every day, they are also forced to undergo throat swab tests. The professor strongly opposes the decision to keep healthy people locked together with infected patients. But even in front of the country's top experts, he has very little authority. To prevent information from leaking and damaging the government's image, the authorities even cut off the entire area's internet access. And it is here that Kim In-hae faces the most painful choice of her life. She is both a mother and a doctor. While fixing her daughter's hair, she suddenly notices something terrifying. Red rashes have appeared around Mi-reu's ear. She knows exactly what this means. Her daughter is infected. If the soldiers discover the truth, Mi-reu will immediately be sent to the severe infection zone, a place where almost nobody comes back alive. Driven by the instinct to protect her child, the doctor who has always upheld her medical ethics makes a decision that goes against everything she believes in. When chaos breaks out at the quarantine camp and nobody is paying attention, she secretly pushes the infected Mi-reu into the supposedly uninfected area. That night, Ji-goo arrives at the quarantine center to check on Kim In-hae. He accidentally notices the red rash on Mi-reu's body. Shocked, he confronts Kim In-hae. Seeing the tears streaming down her face, the kind-hearted Ji-goo eventually softens. He chooses to help her keep the infection a secret. But then, an unexpected breakthrough appears. Soldiers discover the missing smuggled boy, Mi-reu, inside the infected zone. And what they discover is almost unbelievable. His body temperature has returned to normal. This means his body may have developed antibodies capable of fighting the virus. He could be the only hope of saving hundreds of thousands of people. After hearing the news, Kim In-hae asks Ji-goo to look after the critically ill Mi-reu. She immediately joins the medical team and races against time to extract serum from Mi-reu. But Mi-reu's condition continues to deteriorate. Desperate to save her daughter's life, Kim In-hae decides to take an enormous risk. She finds an excuse to send her colleague away, then carries her critically ill daughter to Mi-reu. When Mi-reu recognizes the kind girl who once helped him, he doesn't hesitate. He extends his arm. But this entire scene has already been witnessed by an officer hiding outside the window. The officer, who has also discovered red rashes appearing on his own body, desperately wants to survive. So he immediately reports Kim In-hae to the authorities. Just as she injects the serum into her daughter, the laboratory door is suddenly smashed open. Before losing consciousness, Kim In-hae can only watch helplessly as soldiers seize her beloved daughter and carry her away to the terrifying infected zone. Meanwhile, Ji-goo receives the results of his own medical examination. He has not been infected. Relieved, he takes a breath. But then he notices a patient transport cart passing by. Something catches his eye. A familiar hairband falls through a gap in the body bag. Ji-goo takes a closer look. It's Mi-reu's hairband. His heart sinks. He immediately realizes what has happened and runs after the transport vehicle like a madman. He follows it into an underground parking garage. What he sees there is something he will never forget. Workers are mechanically loading body after body onto carts. Some of the so-called corpses are still breathing and struggling. When Ji-goo demands to know what they're doing, the workers coldly explain the procedure. Ji-goo follows the corpse transport vehicle toward the exit. But what awaits him outside is even more horrifying. It looks like something straight out of hell. The so-called infected quarantine zone isn't a quarantine zone at all. At the center of Bundang Stadium, the authorities have dug an enormous pit. Dozens of mechanical grabbers are picking up infected people dead or alive and throwing them into the pit like garbage. Then gasoline is poured over them. The bodies are set on fire. Many of the people inside are still alive, screaming and struggling as they burn. This isn't a quarantine center. It's simply a massive human incinerator. This scene is one of the most shocking and heartbreaking moments in the entire movie. The government has reduced infected people to nothing more than a problem that needs to be disposed of. Just like garbage, they are burned because, in the government's eyes, it is the fastest and easiest solution. It's a scene that leaves the audience horrified. Ji-goo climbs down into the pit and desperately searches through the mountain of bodies. Just when he is about to give up, he hears a faint cell phone ringing. He follows the sound, slowly searching through the corpses. Finally, he discovers Mi-reu. She is barely breathing, but she is still alive. Ji-goo's eyes immediately fill with tears. He pulls her into his arms and holds her tightly. Meanwhile, another heartbreaking scene is unfolding. A soldier carrying out his duties inside the infected zone suddenly sees his own mother. The moment he recognizes her, he completely breaks down. Without hesitation, he removes his protective mask and runs toward his critically ill, infected mother. To everyone around him, this looks like nothing less than suicide. The officers immediately try to stop him. They forcibly restrain him and even beat him. Soon, the military receives word of the incident and arrives. The soldiers point their guns at the young man. The atmosphere becomes extremely tense. Everyone knows there is no real treatment. The infected people are going to be burned alive. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, the young soldier finally refuses to remain silent. He screams out the truth. The revelation spreads through the quarantine zone like wildfire. The people who were previously kept in the dark are suddenly furious. Anger sweeps through the crowd. Once they discover what the government has been doing, people rush toward the exits. A riot instantly erupts. At the same time, Ji-goo contacts Kim In-hae through a radio. He tells her that he has found her daughter, Mi-reu. But Kim In-hae's colleagues urge her to leave immediately. The antibody sample has been contaminated, they explain, and she must return to continue the research. But Kim In-hae doesn't care about any of that anymore. She desperately runs toward her daughter. However, angry civilians block the ambulance. Her colleague forcibly pulls Kim In-hae into the vehicle. During the chaos, the only radio that can connect her with her daughter falls to the ground. Mi-reu sees what happened. Without hesitation, he jumps out of the vehicle and picks up the radio. But just as he is about to climb back inside, the younger brother's older brother grabs him. The man has always believed that Mi-reu is responsible for his brother's death. Consumed by rage, he viciously drives a knife into Mi-reu's body. What he doesn't know is that Mi-reu has already developed antibodies capable of fighting the virus. He is the only person who can potentially save everyone. In reality, everything that has happened is the result of one tragedy piling on top of another. The government initially promised that people would be released after 48 hours. But again and again, they broke their promises. They lied to the public and refused to allow anyone to question them. Anyone who expressed dissatisfaction was immediately suppressed with force. These actions gradually pushed ordinary people to the edge. Eventually, they ignited the uncontrollable riot. Yes, the smuggler's brother is foolish and impulsive. But if the government had shown more fairness and honesty from the beginning, and if they had placed ordinary people's lives above their own interests, perhaps this riot would never have happened. Perhaps the death of Mi-reu could have been avoided as well. At the very least, things would never have reached this point. Mi-reu is stabbed multiple times and, amid the chaos, is loaded into an ambulance. The vehicle races toward the infected zone. Then, suddenly, Ji-goo's excited voice comes through the radio. He tells Kim In-hae that Mi-reu's fever has gone down and her condition is gradually improving. But Kim In-hae cannot return yet. She has to deliver the antibody sample. When she finally reaches the camp, however, Mi-reu has already died after escaping with the antibodies. The hope of developing a cure seems to have disappeared once again. Now, the only person who truly carries the antibodies is Mi-reu. Ji-goo immediately takes the little girl and heads toward the quarantine perimeter. But by this point, the situation inside the quarantine zone has completely spiraled out of control. Angry civilians begin throwing Molotov cocktails at the military and police. Others stand up and give speeches, urging everyone to fight back. But the unarmed civilians have no way of breaking through the heavily fortified military lines. On the other side are soldiers carrying real guns. The crowd gradually falls into panic. One woman runs toward the front line, raises both hands, and even removes her clothes to prove that she isn't infected. Amid the chaos, the corrupt officer secretly pulls out a pistol and aims it at Ji-goo. Fortunately, an older man manages to stop him. But the bullet strikes a soldier instead. The situation immediately becomes completely chaotic. Terrified civilians scatter in every direction. Luckily, Ji-goo finds a place to hide. The officer is willing to kill because he has personally witnessed Mi-reu survive after receiving the serum. To him, this proves that the blood serum works. Nearby, civilians struck by grenades lie scattered across the ground. Nobody dares to approach them. Ji-goo carefully places Mi-reu somewhere safe before rushing to help the wounded. Then the injured officer suddenly finds Mi-reu. He carries her into a medical room, pulls out a syringe, and prepares to extract the antibodies from her blood. At the critical moment, a man bursts into the room and points a gun at the officer. The man is holding a gun, but he has never actually fired one before. When the officer fights back, the inexperienced man is quickly overpowered and knocked down. Just then, Ji-goo arrives. But against the heavily built officer, Ji-goo is quickly pushed onto the defensive. The officer grabs him and begins choking him. Ji-goo is almost suffocating when the other man suddenly rushes over and grabs the officer's injured wound. Ji-goo immediately takes advantage of the opening. He attacks the officer and eventually carries him outside. The officer dies on the spot. Meanwhile, the confrontation between the civilians and the military has reached a breaking point. The soldiers issue their final warning: cross the yellow line, and you will be shot. The situation is seconds away from turning into a bloody massacre. Kim In-hae suddenly runs out from the military side. She only wants to find her daughter and stop the violence. But amid the chaos, Mi-reu is pushed toward the front of the crowd. The moment Kim In-hae sees her daughter, all her fear and desperation explode. Mi-reu sees her mother and instinctively runs toward her. The high-ranking officials and medical experts watching the surveillance monitors are deeply shaken by the scene. But when someone crosses the yellow line, even if that person is only a 6-year-old girl, the soldiers still raise their weapons. The soldier pulls the trigger. Kim In-hae desperately runs toward her daughter, throws herself in front of her, and uses her body as a shield. The bullet tears through her shoulder. She collapses into Ji-goo's arms. To protect her mother from being shot again, Mi-reu also stretches out her arms and stands in front of her. She screams and cries for her mother. Her cries awaken the courage of the surrounding civilians. One by one, people begin crossing the yellow line. They join hands and form a human wall around the mother and daughter. Even the president is horrified. He protests directly to the American officials. But the American commander refuses to back down. Under the terms of the US-South Korea alliance, the American military holds ultimate command authority. The American officials argue that Kim In-hae's claim alone isn't enough to prove that the antibodies are effective. If infected people are released and the virus spreads outside South Korea, they warn, the entire world could be affected. With that, they activate their second attack plan. Air Force units are ordered to bomb the entire city. At the last possible moment, however, the live broadcast camera focuses on Mi-reu. The red rash on her face has completely disappeared. This proves that the girl now has antibodies. When attempts to persuade the American military fail, the South Korean president takes matters into his own hands. He contacts the missile forces. Fighter jets are locked onto the bombers. Missiles are also locked onto the fighter jets. The fighter bombers roar across the sky above the city. But at the final moment, they turn around and leave. The president immediately announces that all suppression operations are canceled. Medical teams are sent into the infected zone to begin rescue operations. Using the antibodies inside Mi-reu's body, doctors eventually develop a vaccine. The people of the entire city are finally saved. On the surface, The Flu is a movie about a sudden and deadly viral outbreak. But what truly makes it terrifying is the way human nature changes when disaster strikes. The virus is only the trigger. As society begins to collapse, people's fear, selfishness, courage, and kindness are gradually amplified. The film also delivers a sharp criticism of the government's handling of a crisis. The virus may be a natural disaster, but the government's harsh lockdowns, secrecy, and attempts to hide the truth turn that natural disaster into something even more horrifying, a man-made catastrophe. Desperate citizens try to break out of the quarantine zone just to survive. Eventually, the authorities are even pushed to the point of ordering soldiers to open fire on civilians. And that leaves the film with one deeply unsettling question. When disaster strikes, what should we rely on more, the institutions of power or human nature? And when survival and morality are placed directly against each other, what choices will people ultimately make?